Okay, should be coming in.
Listen to the people. Listen to humanity. Listen to the Parrot. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot. Listen.
Do you know that there is a publishing company that wants to make life easier for you as a writer? This publishing company is called World Inkers Printing and Publishing. We publish in all different languages, and we're looking for writers of all genres, all formats. We're looking for scholars, ghostwriters, playwrights, poets, short fiction, novelists, you name it. We're looking for anybody who is interested in writing and the craft of writing to be in touch with us. You can reach us at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. With World Inkers Printing and Publishing, you do not require a lot of money to publish with us. Contact us today at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. Become a winner with other authors at World Inkers Printing and Publishing. Give us a shot. We will surely finish you. Hello, welcome to World Inkers Network. I'm Dustin Pickering, your noble and honest host, and welcome to episode number 288. Today we have Neil Creighton. He is an Australian poet whose work as a teacher of English and drama brings him into close contact with thousands of young lives, most happy and triumphant, but too many tragically filled with neglect or poverty. It makes him intensely aware of how opportunity is so unequally proportioned, and his work often reflects a strong interest in social justice. He has been widely published both online and in a hard copy in places such as Poets Reading the News, Peacock Journal, Autumn Sky Daily, New Verse News, Prosopoesia, and The Second Genesis. His published works are Earth Music from Praxis, Loving Leah from Kelsey Books, Awakening from Cyberwit, Rock Dreaming from Kelsey, and Morteza from Kelsey. He is a contributing editor at Verse Virtual Online Poetry Journal. Thanks for joining us on the show today, Neil. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Dustin, and thank you very much for having me.
Wonderful.
All this way across the sea, through the marvels of technology.
Right. It's a wonderful experience to be, you're all the way over in Australia. I'm here in Houston, Texas.
Yeah.
So, I think my first question, you mentioned in your bio that there is your interest in social justice. So I'm curious, in what way do you think a literature of social justice is impactful on the society at large?
Oh, gee, that's a very hard question. You put your information out there, and some people read it, and hopefully it will make an impact on them. I think the arts as a whole are often trying to do that. And trying to reach out to people. I know that in my own personal life, my awareness of things has been enriched through literature. And I guess poetry is one of the smaller ways that can be done. So it's another voice, and the work is there. And it's a kind of record as well, isn't it?
I think so. Charles Dickens, for instance, a big social reformer writer, people credit him a lot with sort of pushing the bounds of social justice within his Victorian era and recording, as you said, recording the faults and failings of that society.
Yeah. Well, also, I think it became a little sadly controversial, but you take a great novel like The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Mm-hmm. And its insight into American society, in that late part of the 19th century, sailing down the Mississippi River, coming into contact with all the elements of the society, a lot of them pretty bleak. And then you've got the runaway slave, Jim, probably the best character in the whole book. And, Twain wrote that extraordinary story, sometimes pretty misunderstood because, he has characters in there reflecting the injustices of the society. But if you read it with any kind of sensibility, then you understand that Twain wasn't racist. He was crying out against the racism of that society.
Absolutely. And he wrote a lot of tracts and essays and stuff against the injustices of, say, even American imperialism, U.S. imperialism. He wrote a lot against, attacks that the U.S. were doing during his period. And, so he was a very, open-minded and kind-hearted person, I think, in spirit, and his writing reflects that.
Yeah. A great man.
Absolutely. And very witty as well.
And very witty. Yeah, very witty.
I always got to give him credit for his witty. He always has a way of putting things that some very uncomfortable truths that people don't like to deal with. He put them in a way that you could just say, that is true. That's funny the way he puts it. It's really like, he says, what was the quote? I don't know. Life doesn't know me anything. It was here first, or something to that effect. It's like, really clever.
Well, you can go onto the internet, I think, and find all those pages of the witty sayings of Mark Twain, and there are plenty of them. That's for sure.
So, do you have any favorite poets that bring you to inspiration states? Like you just, when you're in those modes where you're just kind of not writing, you read somebody's work and it just opens up a whole world. Do you have any writers like that you enjoy going back to?
Well, it's really broad, I do have a love of the lushness, for example, of the Romantic poets, even though they're a couple of 100 years old. The writing is just so gorgeous. I mean, it's fairly inappropriate now for a modern sensibility, but to go back to it, to read Keats, to read those great odes, it's like a mind wash, I think, to read something like To Autumn or Ode to a Nightingale. I love the poetry of Wilfred Owen. I think, his understanding, his depiction of life on the Western Front are extraordinary. Dulce decorum est. Bent double like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags. We cursed through sludge till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched asleep. Many had lost their boots, but limped on, bloodshot. It's an incredibly beautiful language, and that capacity of art to somehow transform and transcend the horror, not denying the horror, making it more real, but also making it into the permanent beauty of art. That's great. Emily Dickinson I love, Yeats I love. There's lots and lots and lots of poets that you come across in your lifetime. Now I'm reading, lots of more contemporary American poets, people that I, really like, people like Alan Wolowitz, Steve Kleepeter, Robert Wexelblatt, Betsy Mars, all these people who are writing right in the here and now. So does that answer your question for you?
Yeah, sure. That kind of segues into one of my other questions about, you also do editing for Verse Virtual. And so how do you feel about contemporary poetry, and do you see any trends or fads and that you've recognized from a lot of the work that's been put into, that's been sent to you? Do you see moments with people responding to, say, an event in the world, and maybe a certain style that you see that seems to be pretty often, that you've run across in your readings of when you're doing your editing work?
Well, I just think it's so diverse. It's very hard to categorize that idea. People are writing in all kinds of styles. You do get some sort of formal writing, and occasionally I like to write formally too, but it takes so much more thinking. To get the scansion, the rhythm of it going right, and get the rhyme sounding like it's still natural. I'll just segue off that for a moment and say, the whole blank verse thing, which is the most common. You'll find a lot of editors say no rhyming poetry. That's quite common. But the thing about blank verse, I think, is the line still has to be musical.
Right.
Still has to be some kind of beauty of sound in the line. It can't be. I think that's one of the distinguishing characteristics between the prosaic line and the poetic line.
Mm-hmm.
Even though, free verse, looks to all intents and purposes like a prose line, there still has to be in poetry, I think, that what I'm calling that musicality.
Mm-hmm.
Not,
Absolutely.
not the old da-da-da-da-da-da-da musicality.
Mm-hmm.
But you can always hear it. For example,
Passion too, I think, is important in a poem. Passion and as you say, musicality are really.
yeah,
Sometimes I think there's some poets who are really natural at bringing those two elements into their poems,
yeah,
and presenting their poetry. As you read it, you don't necessarily, there's like a subconscious clicking going on. It just happens to, it just feel it deeply.
yeah. Yeah, that's right. Well, I don't think I can quote this absolutely exactly, but there's this E. Cummings poem called "Buffalo Bill's Defunct." Do you know that one?
I've read all of Cummings actually, but I think I remember that poem specifically.
Yeah. Well, you hear all the kind of things that we're talking about, the passion and the musicality. Buffalo Bill's Defunct, who used to ride a water smooth silver stallion and shoot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 engines just like that. Jesus, he was a handsome man. And how do you like, you blue-eyed boy, Mr. Death? Now, I know I haven't quoted I'm just sort of grabbing little fragments of it, but you can see in that sort of blank verse the kind of elements that we're talking about. You could never say that is prosaic.
Right. It has a very loose, free-flowing, approach to it. And he was heavily criticized in his period for being, I guess, I don't know, too avant-garde or not, strictly adhering to the forms or whatever else, that were out there. And that period was like a period of deconstruction of verse. It's very interesting, American poetry in that modernist period is really, I don't know, it's fascinating to me because, as you mentioned, it has that lyric quality, but there's not so much of like sonneteering or, really rigid structures that happen to be imposed on the poem.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's just the modern ear, needs that kind of feeling.
Dissolution of society going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so poetry has to adapt to the times, and
that's right.
Language has to adapt. That's how it works.
Yeah. So even if you went back, 100 years to T.S. Eliot, where you're starting to get that more freedom coming in, you still get a sort of a more subtle rhyming kind of thing that doesn't really work so much now. Oh, well, it does, but it doesn't. Look, I haven't read Proofrock for a long time. We're just trying to let us go then, you and I, while the evening is spread out against the sky like a patient etherized upon a table. You're still getting that rhyming kind of thing, but you're getting that lovely sense of speech going through there.
Right. The very natural sense of
very natural.
That's what is beautiful about that poem and the imagistic quality of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like profound how you hear the, etherized, a patient etherized on the table. It defines that moment, really.
Yeah.
So
I'm remembering this in that first stanza. A lonely cab horse steams and stamps. Let's see, that's a musical line. And then it goes, and then the lighting of the lamps.
Yeah, absolutely. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's rhyming, but it's still, what we're talking about there. Yeah.
Right. So, speaking of like the use of language and bringing that into poetry, how would you say you would bring the element of surprise or astonishment to your readers through the use of language?
Oh, gee, that's a hard one, to answer that, because I don't think that you naturally think about that kind of thing. But sometimes, there's always an ending you want that's surprising. Well, sometimes it's a kind of a bit of a phrase or something like that. And I suppose you want people to be a little bit surprised or have their eyes open to the beauty of something. But I don't think I think so much about that, not consciously anyway. There's I don't know. Let me just see if I could find something. Okay, an element of surprise, I suppose. Can I read a poem of mine?
Sure, we can do that for example.
Yeah. This is called Winter, and it's sort of an exploration, really, of mood, I think, and it may have that idea of surprise in it by the end, I think. So, Winter. See how, on this rainy day, the Banksias dress in burnished gold, and how, on frosty mornings, the humble wattle displays her summery yellow sprays, or how, through the gloom of grey clouds cluster, the sun pokes his bright toe, and hope that, in whatever darkness, come splashes of yellow and gold and descending columns of light. So, I don't know, maybe there's some phrasing in there.
Like a
But
turn of mood, maybe. A little turn
pardon?
a turn of mood slightly, like a
Yeah.
turn
Yeah.
color, use of color in that poem. I really liked the
Yeah.
yellow light and the way, you rephrase that and put that in the context of the winter and defining in that poem. Very nice.
Yes. It's trying to move from the idea of the observation of the natural to some sort of more, spiritual or emotional state by the end,
Right.
With that realization that even in, a cold, frosty winter day, there's this beautiful bit of yellow in the wattle, and it moves in the end. And I suppose that's the little turn or the twist or the surprise or something like that.
Yeah, it's a very nice poem. I liked it a lot.
Yeah,
Do
thank
you
you.
ever employ irony in your work, or do you think about things like that, like what literary devices you're using? I mean, even going back and reading your own work and say, oh, well, I used this device here, or this particular approach here.
Look, that may be the case, but I'm not consciously trying to write in that kind of way. I think, at least my sensibilities don't sort of say I'm going to now write about irony, but it may be that there is some irony. Okay, it's good to, if I could just, I'll give you an example, I think.
You're watching World Inkers Network. Remember, viewers, you can comment during the show, and we will ask questions to our guest. Neil Creighton's with us today, and he's looking for an example of irony in his poetry.
Well, maybe
if we can find it.
Yeah. I don't know whether this is irony so much. It's just, using the elements of the world to evoke a particular mood. This is, Australians, a lot of young Australians went over in World War I, the Great War, so-called Great War, and died in the trenches and mud and trenches of France. And if you go to northern France, there's all these cemeteries laid out with, all these Australians, 18, 19, 20, lying in the ground, dead there. I went there one day, and it's kind of like a pilgrimage for Australians to go there, because it's a sort of acknowledgement of, the horror and what Australia was in those days, and the idealism of those young men, and the horror of their experience. So I wrote this poem called Somme Cemetery. It's not really long. Shall we give it a go, Dustin?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, Somme Cemetery. A soft grey mist covers the distant ridges, lies close upon the green fields and drips off the thousands of white crosses standing rigidly at parade ground attention, marked with this sad simplicity, a soldier of the Great War. Hard to think that in this landscape, a century ago, a nightmarish nationalism opened its maw and rumbled creaking over the green folds, quiet woods and farmlands, venting a reeking stench of mud, barbed wire, crater holes, shells, gas, kilometre upon winding kilometre of trenches, and a tangled twist of young lives stuck in the mud or huddled beneath the thud of artillery or emerging into the staccato spray of machine gun. Yes, it is quiet. The landscape is green. The guns have gone. The young men are dust. Gone too are their mothers or lovers, their brothers, sisters, family, friends. Gone too is the mud, the gas, the trenches, the inconsolable grief and loss. But a soft grey mist covers the distant ridges, lies close upon the green fields, and drips off the thousands of white crosses marked with this sad simplicity, a soldier of the Great War. For the day is weeping, quietly weeping, and must go on weeping still. So I guess there's kind of irony in the idea that this beautiful, quiet, green, rolling landscape hides the horror of the war. Yeah.
We're going to take a brief break. We'll be right back with some more of your poetry and some more discussion.
Yep.
Thanks for joining us, Neil.
Okay.
World English Network. We'll be right back.
I'm at that age where I appreciate every sunrise, sunset, and all the hours in between. The age that causes me to notice the rhythmic timing of each breath. A reminder to thank God for granting me another day. I'm at that age where joints begin to stiffen and maybe I don't move as fluently as I did at 22. But I'm also at that age where I realize many didn't even get to see today. So I pray on bent and aching knee, thank you, God, for blessing me. I'm at that age where I notice my kids making some of the same mistakes that I did. And I remind myself that although never easy, I made it through and so will they. I'm at that age where I understand that money never buys true happiness. But I'm also at that age where I understand it definitely does help to have a bit. I'm at that age where six-pack abs still attract. But I'm also at that age where the behavior of a true gentleman will stop me in my tracks. I'm at that age where I know what it means to be a woman alone with how to treat my man. Beginning with listening as he explains what he needs from me. You see, there may be many similarities, but all men are not the same. I'm at that age where I realize good things don't come to those who wait. They go to those who educate, plan, sacrifice, work, and repeat over and over and over again. I'm at that age where I appreciate spending time with family, whether we're on good terms or not. Because I'm at that age where I'm losing so many people that I care about. I'm at that age where I'm bearing down on that age where there are more chapters of my life in past instead of future tense. But I'm at that age where I refuse to give up. I continue to climb, to create, to improve, love, and share, bearing my soul to the universe while honoring my ancestors, my God, and myself, while becoming the best version of me possible, because I'm at that age.
Welcome back to World Inkers Network. I'm Dustin Pickering. Today we have Neil Creighton. That was Dion Hunter with I'm at That Age. Wonderful spoken word piece. Thank you, Dion, for sharing that with us. So, Neil, would you like to share a couple of poems with us? And also, thank you to Franca Colozo for speaking up during the program and saying that she enjoys the program. So, thank you very much for your viewership. So, Neil, if you'd like to share a couple more poems with us, we'd love to hear them.
Sure, okay. I'll read from my book, Rock Dreaming, which considers the themes of First Nation people of Australia. I'm not stealing their stories. I'm trying to approach it from my perspective. I live on the east coast of Australia. That's the most populated area of Australia. Then there's a big, empty kind of middle area. And on the west coast, 5,000 k's away, there's the city of Perth. And just off Perth, well, it's Port of Fremantle, is a little island. It's a luxury island called Rottnest Island. It was named by the Dutch explorers. They saw these lovely little marsupial creatures called quokkas, and they thought they were rats, and they call them Rottnest. So it's a name. I went there with my wife a few years ago, and I went into the museum, and I had a little read around the museum instead of lying on the beach or drinking wine in the restaurants. And I wrote this poem as a result.
Okay.
Rottnest Island. The wind blows across the dunes, low trees, and shallow lakes. It doesn't weep or cry aloud, but it should. The swells roll across the sea, curl in foam, then slap on the white sand. They have neither words nor tears, but they should. The luxury boats bob at their moorings, and the restaurants stare out to sea. They do not weep or cry aloud, but they should. Should they not weep for the 369 Indigenous men and boys perished from disease, malnourishment, or the cruel violence of the guards? Should they not weep for the 3,700 Indigenous men and boys cramped in fetid cells, now converted into luxury accommodation? Should they not weep for men ripped from the Karri forests of the south or the red soil of the north and imprisoned on this low island? Should they not weep for these soft-eyed men with their bleak and hollow stares, and for all the horror of humanity's history? But always the wind blows across the dunes, and still the waves slap on the white sand. They have neither tears to weep nor words to lament, but surely they should. So, yeah, Rottnest Island, a luxury island now. People in Perth are very proud of it. Have you been to Rotti? They say. And it was a prison island. And there you go. There's that poem.
It is, and it kind of reflects how life moves on and things, even though things change, and the memory of history is with us, but maybe life just kind of moves forward, and nature doesn't like sit there and pause and build statues to the moment. It's just the way life is. It just kind of goes forward and continues on, and as I like to say, life continues on its merry way.
Despite the horror.
Yeah.
Despite the horror.
Things we do to each other. It's
That's right.
Amazing.
The sun is rising. The sun is rising in Ukraine.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's very true. If you'd like to share another one, we'd love to hear it.
Oh, sure. So I'll read another one from, these rock dreaming, they tend to be you know, it's not just a dark book. I try and get some hope in it, but this is about a kid that I once met. It's a kind of a tragic story, but it's a real story. So I'll read it to you. It's Kyle, and I've just dedicated it for all abused and neglected children. Kyle. Maybe his story was only half true, but he told it with such direct, simple power that momentarily the whole class went dead quiet, and through my mind washed waves of sorrow and compassion, a wish that over sad, complex humanity, at least childhood could be joyous. I punched me mum, sad to bolt. I hid all day in a tree, I could hear him calling me. No way I was coming down, me stepdad had bashed me. Then I got in the bus and come down here to me ma and pa's. They're all right. Better than home anyway. He'd come from a long way, big for his age, raw-boned, a guileless, strange kind of innocent, always in conflict with older boys. They'd veer to bump him in the corridors. He'd mouth off at them, defiant. He was only 12. Some years later, I passed him in the street. For a moment, I didn't recognize him. All that child's health had disappeared. He was thin, very thin. His head was studded and shaven. His cheeks were drawn. His eyes had that hollow, empty desolation you sometimes see in those who have seen too much or known too much of human misery, and who have sought momentary respite in a powerfully destructive vortex. He was, I would guess, 15. Finally, I read about him in the local paper. A tide passed over me, anguish for loss and waste, for impotent helplessness, for the misery of some children's lives, for the blight that perpetuates abuse, for those trapped in their individual torment. He'd killed a man, a pedophile, and his dealer. Late one night, he knocked on the door of a house in a quiet, sleeping street. When the door opened, he pulled the trigger and fled into the night, while those in nearby houses slept peacefully on. He was only 18. I thought then of that quiet street, of separate lives, of sleeping comfortably in our separate houses and our separate beds, whilst young lives in an agony of abandonment flee headlong into the dark. And I heard the tolling of bells, deep, sad notes ringing out for every young and damaged life, for every abused, abandoned and neglected child, ringing out loss, waste, heartache, sorrow and pain, bells echoing in desolate mournfulness all through this dark and too often sleeping land.
Wow, that's a really strong and relatable poem. I think a lot of people can relate to those feelings in there.
Yeah.
You know, especially like, the way you end the dark, sleeping land, like, like it's like, again, life goes on. I mean, it's like it's not stopping because of someone's personal pain. And that's the tragedy presented in that poem.
Yeah.
It's something that, when things happen, it happens to most everybody has things happen in their life they would rather not. And life just rolls on over and just keeps going.
It keeps going, and most of us are completely unaware. We may know of our own tragedies, we do, but we're so ignorant of the breadth of them.
Right.
I've got a very short one just to contrast. I don't write everything like it's such a bad thing.
Desolate life. Oh, desolate life. How I
that's right.
You.
For whom the bell tolls. Okay.
Yeah. Go for it. Let's read it. Let's get a hopeful poem.
It's kind of like 3 little haiku.
Okay.
They're not really haiku, but they're sort of a bit like it. Home. The butcher bird pours liquid ripple of song into the blue sky. The rosella dips his red head at the stone bird bath and drinks in alert delight. We sit on the veranda. Your eyes smile. I reach for your hand. Thanks. So
Wow. Yeah, I think that encapsulates, the spirit of our whole interview. It's like life is difficult and tedious and dark sometimes, but there's so much beauty there also.
so much beauty around. Yeah, that's right. There
So
is
we have
beauty.
yeah, absolutely. We have just a little bit of time. So what we do at the end of the program, I'll ask, do you want to say any final words to the viewers, to fellow writers out there, encouragement or any kind of advice you'd like to impart to writers out there today?
Well, writing is just, the practice of writing, isn't it?
Mhm.
And if you're doing poetry, it's probably one of the more difficult arts, at least in Australia. There's more opportunity in America. I think it's more valued, but to me, it's just a matter of doing it, loving it, and doing it, and that's probably about all I've got to say on that particular theme, Dustin.
Would you like to give any shout outs or thank yous to supporters, family members, friends?
Oh, sure. Look, people, especially in the United States, have been so kind to me. The Sacramento Poetry Center, they've had me as their featured poet 3 times. So
Mhm.
I'm so pleased, that they've been so welcoming and so friendly to me. Athens County and Friends, that's in Ohio, I believe, Athens County, Ohio. They've also been really good. James Bryant, who I think Dustin, has been,
Shout out
very,
to him, definitely, because without Spofest, we might have missed you there.
yeah, yeah. And it's lots of people like that. Lots of people have been so friendly and encouraging to me. Terrific poets in the United States. I mentioned 3 of them before who have become my particular friends. Alan Wolowitz, he's a very good poet, Alan, if you come across his work. Robert Wexelblatt, another very good poet, and Steve Kleeperton, another terrific contemporary American poet. Those guys have been so encouraging and so generous to me. So I mentioned them. And that's probably what I want to say there.
Well, thanks for joining us on the program, Neil. And if you know of any other fellow Australian poets who'd like to join us on the program, let them know and pass my info along, and I'll get them on the show. It'd be wonderful to have some more. I think you're the first Australian we've interviewed.
Yeah, well, how about that, eh?
And any kind of writer, not just poets, too. We look for all kinds of writers. So anybody out there that would like to be interviewed, promote their book, just talk about literature and the arts and humanities, we'd love to have them.
Well, thank you for that very typical United States generosity.
Very welcome. It was very pleasant to speak with you today.
And very nice to be here, indeed. Thank you, Dustin.
Thank you. This has been World Inkers Network, episode number 288. So we're going a long way. We've been going around since March of last year. So it's been about a year now. So that's, hey, happy anniversary to us. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube, like, share, and comment on our content. We'd love to have you guys as subscribers. So, and tell us what you think, and if you happen to have a little spare change, we'd love to, you share your generosity with us to keep this program alive and moving forward. You can get to us at paypal.me/nyparrot. As you see on the banner there, support, and the address is paypal.me/nyparrot. And if you want to be on the program, you can get in touch with me, Dustin Pickering, at literarycorner@newyorkparrot.com. And remember to send a short paragraph bio, a headshot, and a couple of sample works. We're looking for more than poets. We've interviewed a lot of poets, but we do want all kinds of writers. And also remember, World Inkers Monthly Magazine's first edition just came out as of a few weeks ago. So you guys, if you haven't purchased a copy, this is an exciting volume. It's a beautiful magazine, 65 pages of wondrous literature, wondrous art, essays on the humanities, on poetry, on the arts, on human rights, and there's even an essay on bullying in schools written by a young man in Uzbekistan who is making his way in the scene today. So get a look at that magazine, World Inkers Monthly Magazine. Just go on Amazon, take a look. And remember, if you aren't writing right now, there's still time in the day left. So if you have a good afternoon and get to writing. Thank you. World Inkers Monthly Magazine is a fine source for your literary interests. It's an all-source magazine with poetry, prose, and essays and articles, as well as interviews. It's all full-color art and photography from a variety of voices and artists. You will find this magazine entertaining. This is an all-purpose readership, and we are looking for new voices. This sleek, full-color edition of World Inkers Monthly Magazine will be something pleasant for your eyes as well as for your mind, and we're looking for authors for one. Are you curious about financial literacy? Then take a look at Professor Anthony Rivecchio's new program on Parrot TV. It's called Financial Focus University. This is an excellent program to learn about questions related to your own finances post-COVID, and how you can manage your money, how you can work with your tax situation. And this is an excellent and informative discussion of financial literacy. With Professor Anthony Rivecchio, your financial problems will be solved at Parrot TV with Financial Focus University.